Happy holidays, everybody. All right, we're gonna get started here with learning target number 7. First, we gotta turn off our Christmas music here. All right, so learning target number 7 is all about attitudes. If you take a look at this learning target, it says, discuss the attitude formation and change, including persuasion, strategies, and cognitive dissonance. All right, how this is going to happen is I'm going to talk about attitude formation and change, as well as cognitive dissonance, and there's another video. Mr. Schuler is going to talk about persuasion strategies. All right, let's get started. You may be interested to know where the notes are. I have a Google Doc in your Edmodo folder, which you may want to pause the video right now and pull those up. Oh, Google Doc is the wrong answer. I have a PowerPoint that you can pull up out of Google. I don't know what will happen. We'll see. All right. Okay, so our essential question for today. Oh, I wanted to ding the bell. I forgot. Hey, did everybody see what Dylan got me? Love it, love it, love it. So exciting. Okay, very bedazzled. Okay, anyways, so the essential question for today is, how do attitudes form and change, and what role do they play in behavior? So before we get started, we have to talk about, well, what is an attitude? Excuse me. An attitude is anything that we have an opinion about. It's our opinions about people, about places, about objects, about ideas, about everything. There's hardly anything in this world that we don't have some sort of judgment about. And we've talked about how much we judge people, we judge objects and things and places just as much, okay? All right, so where do attitudes come from? Psychologists are interested in knowing this, and what social psychologists have discovered is that our attitudes, especially when we're small, really come from our parents. We see how our parents act about certain things, we hear what they say about certain things, and we begin to adopt their attitudes about things. But as we get older and we begin to experience the world more, we begin to have our own attitudes and our own beliefs about things. All right. So, here's a question for you. What do you think? Do attitudes then predict how we will behave towards something, or do our behaviors predict our attitudes? Think about this for a minute, okay? Here's what I mean. If we have an attitude about something, let's say alcohol, all right? We think that alcohol is absolutely not okay until you are 21. Then this could predict that because we feel this way and we feel very strongly about it, then we probably wouldn't drink until we're 21. Or do our behaviors create our attitudes about something? So we observe that we work out 5 times a week, so then do we have an attitude that exercise is important because it must be if this is what I do every week? I don't know. What do you think? That's what we're going to answer today. So first of all, ooh, I gotta move me. I'm kind of in the way. Shocking, right? Okay, can attitudes predict behaviors? Well, what social psychologists have discovered is that, yes, attitudes can predict behaviors, okay? But only under certain circumstances are they more likely to predict behaviors. So if we have a belief about something, then we're going to follow through with how we believe, basically. What social psychologists have discovered is that when we have attitudes that are very, very strong, we're very passionate about something, okay? Let's say we're really passionate about recycling, okay? That would mean that we're probably very, very, very much going to be somebody who doesn't throw their aluminum cans out the car window. We want to wait until we get somewhere so that we can recycle it. And we don't just put it in the trash can, we put it in the fancy green cans, okay? Social psychologists have also discovered that if we have a very strong awareness of what our belief is about something, sometimes we don't have very we haven't really thought about what our opinion is about something. And that means then that we probably wouldn't really know how we're supposed to behave toward that object or person or whatever. But if there's something that we've really thought a lot about and we have a very strong awareness about it, maybe we've done a speech on it, maybe we've researched it, maybe we've written papers about it, maybe we've read a lot of articles about it, so we have a strong awareness, then that would increase the likelihood that our behavior would match our attitude, okay? Also, if a person has a vested interest in something, all right, here's what this may mean. Let's say, by chance, somebody's parent passed away from lung cancer because they were a smoker, all right? So they have the attitude that smoking is bad. So they're probably less likely to smoke in their behaviors because they've had the experience of vested interest in something. And then the last one, attitudes are very subjected to social norms. So if you live within a culture where you're supposed to have certain attitudes about things, that definitely can be a way to get people to conform so that their behaviors follow and match with attitudes. All right, so let's turn the coin over here. When can behavior predict attitudes? The opposite way around. Well, there's two theories about that you need to know. The first one is the cognitive dissonance theory, all right? Now, first, before we can talk about the theory, we need to talk about what cognitive dissonance is. Now, we've all experienced cognitive dissonance, all right? Cognitive dissonance is when you feel inside very strange. You have a very uneasy, and the textbook, if you look here at the definition, describes it as a discomfort inside. Okay? This is not something that you generally express outside, but you feel it inside. Basically, you want to put down in your notes, cognitive dissonance is when we know that we're being hypocritical. We know that we are not practicing what we preach. Okay? All right. So that's what cognitive dissonance is. Here's what the theory says. All right? The theory says that we don't like how this feels, and you want to put this down in your notes. Okay? We don't like how cognitive dissonance feels inside of us. We want to maintain our homeostatic balance inside with our feelings, okay? So to make ourselves feel better, because we're not practicing what we preach, we will do one of two things. One, we will change our attitudes to match our behavior, or we will change our behavior to match our attitude. Now, what Fessinger discovered is that it's much easier to change our attitudes about something than it is to change our behaviors, okay? So let's think about this and use an example here. Let's say that I'm a person who believes that under no circumstances is it okay if you're in a relationship that you should cheat on somebody. That's my attitude. That's my belief about something, okay? But then I find myself in a situation where I cheat on my significant other. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not practicing what I preach. So I have the cognitive dissonance feeling inside me. I feel uncomfortable about my own behaviors. So what I will do, according to the theory, is I will change my attitude or my behavior, which will be a lot harder, but I'll change my attitude about how I feel about cheating. And I'll say to myself, well, my attitude now is it's okay to cheat if the relationship is starting to fall apart. Or it's okay to cheat when my boyfriend cheated on me first. And I will compromise my beliefs, basically, to make myself feel better. Now, I could change my behaviors and not cheat at all and ever again. But according to Fessinger, it's very, very unlikely. It's far too easy to just change our attitudes about something and compromise our beliefs. So there's been lots of people who have studied cognitive dissonance, and I want to show you what Fessinger discovered in his 1957 experiment that he did with college students, where he had them do this very boring task. He had them play with these cogs or these like wooden pegs and like twist them and turn them, or he had them sort spools of thread by color into like little trays. Highly exciting, right? Well, he asked the people how they felt about this task, and all of them said it was really very boring. Well, then he asked them to do something. He asked them to try to get somebody else to come in and do this and lie to them and tell them that this was a very exciting experiment and that they would want to come in and do this. And then he divided them up into separate groups, and you'll see what happens.
In the mid-50s, Leon Festinger and his colleague Merrill Carl Smith conducted a classic experiment in which students were engaged in very boring tasks. The students were then given a request by one of Festinger's staff.
Okay, that's fine. Let me tell you now what we're actually studying here. It's the effect of preparatory mental set on performance. The rest of the subjects are prepared by being told that the experiment will be very interesting and enjoyable. In fact, lots of fun. Now I have a somewhat unusual request to make of you. The next subject is waiting right outside, but the fellow who ordinarily gives the spiel isn't here. I wonder if you could possibly take his place. As a matter of fact, we figure we'll be needing someone in the future, so I'd like to offer you a $20 retainer and have you remain on call for us. Would that be all right?
$20? That'd be fine. Half the students were randomly assigned to the group that received $20 for lying that the experiment was fun. The other half were given only $1 for lying.
$1 as a sort of a retainer and have you remain on call with us. Would that be all right with you?
Yes, that'll be all right.
The cognitive dissonance came from the knowledge that the experiment was in fact boring, and $1 was insufficient reward for lying. Many of the $1 subjects actually convinced themselves that the experiment was fun after they made their decision, to reduce the dissonance between their prior beliefs and their behavior. They came to believe a big lie for a small incentive.
To a girlfriend of mine who participated in an experiment last week, and she said it was very tedious.
Oh, I don't think that was the same experiment because this one wasn't boring at all. I didn't think so.
The $20 subjects, on the other hand, felt no dissonance because they felt comfortable in lying just for the money.
He said it was pretty miserable and that I should do everything I could to get out of it.
Well, I think maybe your friend was wrong. Perhaps it was a different experiment because this was a lot of fun. It appeared to me as if it were a puzzle. We had to turn these knobs, and I tried to figure out what we were doing it for, but I really couldn't figure it out. Perhaps you'll have better luck.
Other theories might predict that the man who is paid most would have the highest motivation for enthusing over the dull task and would be most sold on it himself. Cognitive dissonance theory leads to an exactly opposite prediction. The man who is paid $20 knows that the task is dull, but he also knows that he had sufficient justification for saying that it wasn't. Did you enjoy working on the manual test?
Well, it really wasn't too enjoyable. In fact, it was rather boring.
How about the man who is paid $1? He knows the task is dull, but he has two discrepant thoughts. He also knows that he did not have sufficient justification for saying that it wasn't. For him, there is dissonance. Time after time, we have seen what follows. He reduces the dissonance by changing his opinion about the dullness of the task. Did you enjoy working on the manual task?
Yes, I enjoyed it.
Would you like to participate in such an experiment again?
Yes, I think I would like to.
Anytime there is insufficient reward, there will be dissonance. The general principle seems to be that people come to believe in and to love the things they have to suffer for.
By discovering how people actually behave and not how some theory says they ought to behave, psychology can provide guidelines to help us catch ourselves before we go astray, or redirect us once we do, if we follow them.
Okay. Did you see who that was? It was Phil Zimbardo. All right. So, if that study doesn't make sense to you, please ask your teacher about it, and that can be explained on Monday when we come back to school if you have questions about it. It's one of those famous ones that you need to know. All right. So, The other theory that tries to explain if behavior can predict attitudes about something is the self-perception theory. And this one says that we take a look at our behaviors, and if we do something, then we assume that we have a certain opinion about it. Like, let's say that we look at our behaviors to try to think about what we think about our opinion on broccoli, let's say, for example. And if we find that we never really, I don't know, eat broccoli very often, we might assume that we don't really like broccoli, okay? Because, well, I don't eat it very much, so I must not like it. See how the behavior is predicting the attitudes? Or sometimes we might feel like very sleepy. So this is our behavior. So then we might think, oh, it must be time for bed. Okay? This is the self-perception theory. So which one of these is correct? Does cognitive dissonance predict or try to tell us what our attitudes will be based on our behavior, or is it the self-perception theory? And what psychologists have discovered is that it depends on the instance, okay? Both theories help to explain our behavior. Depending upon, my lights just went off. You don't know that though because the thing's not on. Anyways, hold on. It's like I have a clapper. Okay. What was I saying? I can't remember now. Oh, it depends on the instance, obviously, and the situation. Okay, sorry, that was like major lull. Okay, moving on then, let's take a little practice with what we've just learned about attitudes and how attitudes change. So take a look at this question right here. Who conducted research on cognitive dissonance? Leo Tolstoy, Sarah Bosch, Leon Fessinger, Phil Zimbardo, or Daryl Bem? The answer should be Leon Fessinger. Good. All right. Sally is very passionate about recycling. Predict her behavior when faced with a situation to recycle or not to recycle. Will Sally pitch an aluminum soda can out her car window? Will Sally be less likely to pitch her soda can out her car window? Will Sally conduct a study on recycling? Will Sally give a speech on recycling? And the answer should be B. Sally will be less likely to pitch her soda can out her car window. And our last question. According to the cognitive dissonance theory, which of the following would be best way to get people to like you? Give them presents, show interest in their interests, tell them that you like them, reward them for good behavior, or persuade them to perform a difficult or unpleasant task for you? And the answer would be E. Again, if you have any questions about these, please ask your teachers. Now, something kind of interesting that we can use cognitive dissonance for, and you might find rather fascinating, is if somebody does in fact not like us, there is something that we can do. Not so much to like us, but if they don't like us, using cognitive dissonance.
I close my eyes and it's like I'm there back at home.
How do you get someone who hates you to like you? You ask them for a favor, of course. This is called the Ben Franklin effect. In Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, he recounts how he had learned that one of his rival legislators, a man with a deep-seated animosity towards him, had, in Franklin's words, a very scarce and curious book in his private collection. Franklin asked if he could borrow it. The rival, flattered, let him, and after Franklin had sent the book back with a thank you note, the man's demeanor changed and they became great friends, until the day of his death. Why does this happen? The Ben Franklin effect is an example of cognitive dissonance, where our brain cannot hold to conflicting ideas or thoughts, and only one of them can win in the end. The person cannot reconcile his hatred or dislike with his favor. After all, you only do favors to people you like. Hence, he justifies his actions by assuming that he did you a favor because he likes you. So in fact, it's a process that works both ways. You don't just do nice things to people you like, but you also grow to like people because you do nice things for them.
Ooh, interesting. Psychology, helping you with your problems. Try that out. Give it a whirl. Let us know how it works. All right, thus ends my half of this learning target. I hope that you are able to answer this question right here. How do attitudes form and change, and what role do they play in behavior? If you can't answer this, please ask your teachers. All right, make sure that you take the Edmodo quiz on this if you're feeling pretty confident about it. Hope that your break is going very well, and I will see you all very soon. Well, not Schuler's people, but you know what I mean. All right, have a good one. Bye.